Microphone check. Microphone check.
Hey y'all, welcome to the Devon A. Morris Unfiltered call-in show. Have a seat. Let's get ready. You have any questions? Come on, call in. Come on to that Discord channel. Do me a favor, get the Unfiltered crew some finger snaps. We're ready to get started here. Mondays, 8 p.m. Every single Monday, we're here. I'm excited about it. Are you? Let's get this show started, y'all. The greatest Scrum show on earth. I'll see y'all soon. Enjoy. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another fabulous week. Welcome to the Devon A. Morris Unfiltered call-in show. Where we answer your questions about Agile and Scrum. I went ahead and threw up the actual, link just in case you want to join us and ask a question. But tonight, I have something near and dear to my heart that I would love to talk about. I think that a lot of you all are impacted by this little small thing. Several of you may have a certification with Scrum Alliance or certification with other entities. And normally these certifications have renewal cycles, some of them every year. Others is just when you pass the test or you officially were certified, then you got a year to actually recertify. And this is that time where you need to think about what you need to do to start making sure that you have everything that you need to recertify, to make sure that you are ready to not one, just pay the fee, but two, to make sure that you get everything that you can have to recertify. And a lot of times, what I'm really referring to more than anything else is something called, I'll just say, continuing education units, recertification units, Scrum education units, professional development units, right? They go by many names, right? Because they exist across many, many industries. So if you are familiar with any one of those things, then you know the certification is associated with. But usually once a year, I start planning out at least my plan toward recertifying my certifications. My biggest one is obviously to certify Scrum trainer, and I know that I have to have a certain amount of Scrum education units, along with other things that exist, right? And if you take a look at these things, when you actually go and start really diving deep in terms of your Scrum education units or your professional development units or your continuing education units or whatever it is, they normally have a certain set of criteria. And one of the things that you need to be familiar with, very, very familiar with, is a lot of times it's not as hard as what we claim it to be. It just usually isn't, okay? And normally if you're doing work within that field, if you're reading, if you're attending conferences, if you go to a few meetings, you probably will be earning those units, but you may not think that they qualify, right? So perfect example, if you are a CSM, Certified Scrum Master, okay? For Scrum Alliance, that's a foundational certification, okay? It's going to require that you have 20 Scrum education units. It's going to require a renewal fee of $100, and I believe in Scrum Alliance it kind of will recertify your CSM, CSPO, and CSD all with that one fee, right? Because they're a foundational level certification. Now, the key statement here is those 20 Scrum education units. And I believe that most others, continuing education or your professional development education units, whatever you call them in the world that you live in, will ask for a few things. And Scrum Alliance is a good example because It's probably the one that many people in this community would be familiar with. And I have other examples that I can provide you that could actually be helpful. So if you really think about it, Scrum Alliance has really about 4 areas that are really key to recertifying, and they fall into volunteering, learning, events, and other. The other is really key, right? Because when you think about events, okay, especially during a pandemic, some of us really did attend, real events. Like, I was a part of some coaching retreats. Okay, that would be a good example of something that I attended. Or I was a part of a regional gathering, or I was a part of a user group, a meetup group, a some kind of group where the primary topics are focused in on Scrum. Well, that time that you spend there, whether you're presenting, coaching, or just simply attending the session, it counts. It counts. So if I go to a meetup group and I do a presentation about, let's just say I do a presentation about story points and how to forecast, okay? I'm presenting that time that I present. Let's just say that hour I'm there, the additional hour I'm answering questions, I would earn that time toward my Scrum education units, right? Because that's an event. So then let's just talk about the people that's sitting in the room, right? So if I'm presenting something, obviously there are people in the room. And the people in the room, they're just attending. That's all they're really doing. They're not doing anything more than just attending. And even though they're sitting there and you're consuming the information and they really haven't done anything special but just kind of showed up, okay? Guess what they get? Scrum education units. If they're there for the same amount of time that I'm there, they get the same amount of units. So me attending a Scrum gathering, for example, or some other Scrum-related conference, Agile Alliance, those kind of things, would actually earn me Scrum education units because, again, they're eligible activities. They're eligible activities, right? So events is a real an easy thing to think about, right? Okay. Learning. Making sure you take time to actually learn, especially from Scrum trainer, certified enterprise coach, certified team coach, from different REPs. They have different learning activities. Most of them are paid. A lot of them are paid, right? I'm not saying that you go spend a ton of money on things, right? But a lot of them are paid, right? Especially if you're talking about a classroom educational setting. Somebody wants to offer up the CAL training, or you have a registered education provider, want to offer up the certified Scrum developer, and then that attendance that you have counts. That time counts, right? The time you spent preparing a presentation. I'm authoring or writing a book, right? Blogs you write, right? Watching training videos, webinars you attend, right? Reading a book, right? That time can count. I'm not saying, you can't say you've been reading a book for, the whole time, right? Obviously, there's limits to all these things, and normally within certain categories, you can only put so many units, right? So you can spread them across. But the idea is really simple. You want the opportunity to make sure that you understand that learning is something there for you, right? So it's just like, let's just say this, for example. If you was to go watch some of these videos, this qualifies. Why does this qualify? I'm a certified Scrum trainer. Bearded Eagle is a registered education provider. So you get a double dip. You literally get a double dip on that, right? So that's a good thing. Also, you have volunteering, right? That non-compensated Scrum services that you're offering. So when you're offering your services and you're doing that for free, community-based, you're just finding ways to give it back to the community. That could be volunteering for the Scrum Alliance. That could be other ways of volunteering. Like right now, I'm working with a group over in the DMV area, and I'm volunteering some of my time, and I will mark some of that time as my Scrum education units, right? And so, a lot of my, I could name off a lot of times I've volunteered and I've used that in terms of Scrum education units. So just another one of those really super important ways to kind of deal with it and give back. And then there's a category of other that is normally just, other types of learning, right? Other ways to acquire Scrum knowledge, right? Let's just say I ran an experiment, in an environment with a group of people. That might qualify. I'm not saying it does, but that might qualify. So the reason why I bring this up, because I know a lot of you all have questions. I always, as people are getting close to recertifying, I always get a few questions asking, hey, what do I need to do to recertify? Well, it's to pay the fee, one, and make sure that you have your Scrum eligible activities or the SCU eligible activities completed, and that you document them in your dashboard, so and then they're ready for anybody that's going to approve what you're asking for, at least your renewal process, right? And if you have a higher level of certification, that means obviously you need more Scrum education units, right? You need more and more and more as you go higher and higher up the ladder. But please understand another thing. At least with the Scrum Alliance, higher level certifications, I do believe, cascade down. So you pay for the highest one and the rest of them will renew along with it. So that's a benefit. But you just want to make sure that you take care of those things. Don't wait till the last minute. Normally for me, it's a planning thing. I take a certain time of the year, normally the beginning of the year, and I plan, in December, January, that time frame when it's the holidays. I actually plan for at least the time frames that I'm going to carve out to make sure that I do some of these activities. Now, I'm not saying that my time frames fall exactly with some of the events that I want to go to, but then I may just switch things around, right? If I know that I took a month, not a month, that'd be nice to take a whole month out. But if I know that I took a week out in March and an event is happening in February, I may, move things around a little bit to make sure that time I had allocated for the SEU activity is taken care of in February, and then I push the other event out till March if I can do that. So I will work around and find ways to do things, but I start planning that every single year, looking at my certifications and evaluating what I need to do. Because for me, I got PMP stuff, right? Professional development units. I got to make sure that I get those things to qualify, right? I have to get Six Sigma, certified Six Sigma black belt. So I got to get registered education units or recertification units, RUs, for that. So that is a list of things. Oh, you can get some of these things from working too, because I know with PMI, PDUs I get from working. Also, some of my recertification units can come from working in terms of my Six Sigma black belt. So that is always helpful. So what you should be doing is you should be planning out. You should plan out getting these things done. Because I'm constantly in a situation where I run into an issue where I am trying to take care of this, and next thing you know, I'm panicking because I done forgot about something. Well, I put the thing out there. I have someone that love to join us, so I'm going to go ahead and bring Travis in just a minute. Travis may have a question, so let's get Travis all set and ready to go here. Travis, how you doing?
Hey, woof, woof.
Woof, woof. I like hearing that. Some people don't know what that's all
Yeah,
about.
I had you a few years back in Hartford, Connecticut. I don't know if you remember, but
Yeah. That's the only time I did. Only time I did a class in Hartford. Yeah, absolutely. No, well, here's the deal, right? Tell them what the woof woof is all about. Because some people think that I made that up, but Ken Schwaber actually made that up. Well, I got it through Tom Meller, and Ken Schwaber actually made that up. But tell them what happens, so so people don't think I be pulling people's legs.
Oh man, so you're putting me on the spot. So I'm trying to remember this whole thing
That's
about
okay.
Wolf
You
Wolf.
remember that part. So at the end of the
Yeah.
class, what I
Yep.
normally do is I go around and tell people a story, and then I shake their left hands, and the classic response to it is woof. So I shake their left hand and shake mine, and we both say woof at the same time, right? That's the ending, but that's not everything in the ending, right? It just really isn't everything. But that's, at least the ending part. So a lot of people, when I go around, they say woof, 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 and we just respond the same. So Travis, welcome to the show. Do
No
you
problem.
have a question?
So my question is, of course, we understand CSM is the base, right?
Yes.
Being for the most part, and then if you're trying to do product, but now that we're thinking about new challenges within organizational transformation,
Yeah.
how to scale it effectively. So my question to you is the enterprise coaching transformation is an adaptable skill that could be applied anywhere. Because a lot of people may work in teams, but how do you scale and transform an organization? I think that's the question. So
Well,
will this come?
that's a huge question.
Yeah.
That's a really big question. Now, am I a supporter? Well, let's put it this way, okay? My problem is that just as well as I do, Travis, there's a lot of scaling frameworks that exist out there today.
Correct.
That's problem number one, right? And all of them do something slightly different, okay?
Correct.
And every single one of those ways of scaling actually has white papers, stories, just positive comments that point toward their success. Every single one of them. So not a single one of them, all of them have those things. Some of them are more popular than the others, okay? So that's another good thing, okay? Now, what I would say to you, for me, I have always been more interested, Travis, in helping the culture live and breathe the values and principles associated with the Agile Manifesto. Let's throw Scrum out the window for a minute. Let's throw everywhere scaling.
The core four, and the 12 delivered. Yep.
Right. And so those are the foundational elements that I focus on whenever I'm trying to have an impact on culture. Call it coaching, call it consulting, call it whatever you want to call it. It doesn't even matter to me, because I think you can go do a combination or a little bit of everything. And I don't think there's no right, perfect combination, right? But the only thing that I found that truly has never failed has been helping the culture go as far as it can down the Agile path of taking those principles and finding ways to live and breathe them, if that makes sense. And you can go get whatever certification you want to, like they have health certifications, assessments, and all kinds of things that exist, that people can go and apply themselves every 6 months or whatever. But if I'm looking at it, the question really becomes, when I look at something simple as working software over comprehensive documentation, could you say your culture lives and breathes that? And can you show incremental improvements that show you're getting better and better at that over time? And forget the word working software, whatever product you're trying to deliver, right? Well, product, result, or service, whatever that increment is associated with, that's what it really is about. And so by me looking at the Agile Manifesto, what I really do, Travis, is I try to tie the Agile Manifesto to the business goals that exist. Because a lot of what's missing from most transformations and most of us as Agile coaches
is the connection between strategy and delivery.
Absolutely. And that's the connection that you really need to make. Because if you don't make that connection, the higher ups don't really care. It doesn't move them. And then if you're not tying the work that we're doing to the business goals that exist, then you run into a problem where the results don't have an impact, right? And so
So
the first place I saw start is always with trying to tie those values and the principles into the culture and finding ways to help them live and breathe that. Now, the funny thing is, Travis, is that there's no company that's going to do it perfectly. And if I think about companies I've been at and seen them doing Agile for years, they look way worse than other companies, but they're way better than what they used to be. And so I always look at them relative to where they were at. You understand where I'm coming from? Because you take Hartford. The Hartford area is full of finance and insurance, right?
correct,
And those companies move really slow, don't they?
correct.
And so with how slow those companies move, do I expect those companies to look like Google, Amazon, companies that's only been around 20, 30 years versus companies that's been around 100 years? Do I
Right.
expect them to look different than them? Yes, I do.
Correct.
Because 100 years of culture is very, very different than 20 to 30 years worth of culture. And so realistically, it's on a different scale. I try to make sure that I take those insurance companies, those finance companies, and look at where they are relative to where they've been. And how much further can we take them down the path of agility toward meeting business goals, strategy, just those overall objectives that they're trying to move forward to. Now, am I saying go do scaled Scrum? No. Am I saying
No.
am I saying not to do it? I'm not saying that either. You
Nope.
know? But I'm saying it
Let me.
starts at the most base place. Go ahead.
So can I share something on your show?
Yeah, go. No, please.
Okay. So the two things that we clearly understand, right? There needs to be a very, very clear business objective,
Yeah.
and there needs to be a very, very clear outcome which we're trying to achieve.
Agreed. Yeah.
As Scrum teams begin to do delivery, right, they have to connect strategy.
Yeah.
One of the successes that I've had probably within my career was the adaptation of understanding object to key results, right?
Okay. Yeah.
So getting that stuff down, even on a team level, if you understand what your objectives are and the key results that you want for those outcomes, delivery and services and working software align to that goal because you know what the outcomes are. They're measurable. They then become scalable, which changes the culture, right? So as you begin to start delivering stuff, people are like, they become happy. Like, oh, look, we have achieved this outcome.
Yes.
We now move more towards continuous improvement. We now move more towards continuous delivery. We're now being able to deploy software into an enterprise, and we know what the result is. It's very clear. What we have seen, probably within your career and my career, is that sometimes when those things are really unclear, the delivery teams just spin their wheels. They deliver software, but they're not customer centric.
Yeah.
And it just fails. So you may have a backlog of deployed software that never get released into the environment.
You may have deployed
Nobody
it
ever
really, really
uses it.
fast, right? You may be deploying it every 45 seconds, but if it doesn't move the needle in terms of value, it was a waste, right?
Right.
So I agree with you. So then here's the question, right? Here's a question I'll ask you, okay? We're starting a brand new year, 2022, right?
Yep.
We are, let's just say 2 months away from 2022, right? If you had a team that didn't have their stuff together, they didn't have these things tied together, they were trying to make sure that they could scale in a very valuable way, just as you talked about tying it all the way back up to strategy, right? What would you recommend? Like, just give me 3 things that you would recommend for a Scrum team, a single Scrum team that has no idea of their direction, right? What would you recommend that they do, right? Right now, if they didn't see that they had that direction.
So if the product owner actually exists on the Scrum team, depending on the model,
Let's
right?
just say they do.
If they do,
Mm-hmm.
that they've actually had a decent conversation with their product owner to understand what they think some of the deliverables will have to be. First thing, right? Engage my customer.
Mm-hmm.
Even if I did a design thinking type of workshop to understand customer needs, I need to frame the problem.
Okay.
That's what the first effort should be, right? Once that product owner kind of understands
Mm-hmm.
where that is, I then can bring in my Scrum team to talk about, even if I want to shift left and saying, what do you think some of these ideas, these possible solutions that we could deliver to solve some of these problems?
Okay.
Let's start building that backlog, right? Let's just start building that backlog.
Okay.
As long as we understand what we think that our customers' outcomes have to be, and I know what the problem is framed, let's start that conversation, right? Now, like in November, right? It's in December.
Yeah.
So if we decided that we wanted that roadmap to look a little bit better than what it does now, we can. But first step number one, let's engage our customer. Now, here's the interesting thing.
Okay.
A lot of people get screwed up with the customer.
Mm-hmm.
If you're an internal team, you're outputting something maybe to a downstream consumer, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Right? So we begin to think about what those personas are in our user stories, even Scrum 101.
Yeah.
A lot of teams don't understand who they're outputting their customers to. So that's a good identification.
Okay.
Who really is our customer? And I say that in a loose way.
Okay.
Our customer can either be an external customer that we're deploying or an internal customer that's just downstream that's receiving some of our stuff.
Right.
But we got to have it very clear.
Okay. So let me go back to the top, right? Because the very first thing you tied everything to was the role of the product owner.
Correct.
Or for lack of a better term, the person that holds the key to strategy.
The voice of customer.
The voice of the customer, right? So the product owner becomes the embodiment of that voice of the customer. And so
Correct.
with them having that voice of the customer, all you really said, and what I heard you say was that we're going to get some clarity on that voice of the customer. We're going to make sure that we tie back, whether you want to call it a vision or anything else, roadmaps, whatever you have, we're going to find ways to tie that back to the organization's overall objectives and goals that at least have an impact, at least if we can have an impact on, so we can move forward. That's the first place where you started at, and I really like that, Travis. Why did I like that? I like that because I remember being a young Scrum Master, and for the first 7 years of my career, I didn't really care if we had a product owner or not. Like literally from 2005 to 2012. Maybe in name because Scrum says to have it, but I also realized we were delivering a lot of different things that ultimately was shelved. Ultimately, nobody was using it, right? So it didn't move the needle. It really didn't have an impact. So, I didn't really learn until 2012. So I'm 2005. I didn't learn until 2012 how valuable a product owner really was. And I just didn't know any better, right? I know better now. And a lot of times the first place I start off when I walk into an organization is right there with whoever is embodying the voice of the customer. And it could be a bunch of people. So that first thing you said, that very, very first thing you said is absolutely key and absolutely critical, right? And if you as a Scrum team, you don't see that you really have a clear direction on that voice of the customer, what do you think you should be doing then, Travis?
Well, you're going to be trying to create those clearing conditions to ensure that happens, right? Mm-hmm. Your Scrum Master is really, if you don't, so we have two things going on.
Yeah.
If no product owner exists on a Scrum team,
right,
that Scrum team alone needs to be able to try to get that information some way, shape, or form.
Yes.
Right? and that can happen through a bunch of events, right?
Mm-hmm.
Depending on where you are in your organization,
Mm-hmm.
that now instead of it being a role
Mm-hmm.
of the product owner,
Mm-hmm.
it now becomes a Scrum team competency, which they have to master, right? They have to now learn how to actually take customer requirements and figure out how their demand management system works.
Mm-hmm.
So
So we got to
if
take a
if
step back realistically and ultimately
yeah,
figure out where we're going to, so then we don't waste a lot of time when we start doing other things, right? When we start actually doing the
yeah,
work, right? Because we can start delivering things that doesn't, again, just doesn't move the needle. Even though it might be wonderful and great stuff, even though we might can do all kinds of internal stuff, right? Is important. And so when you said the actual customer, identifying who your customer is, right? All I kept thinking about is who's receiving your output, who's receiving
exactly.
your output, who's receiving your output, and I realized that most of us have more than one customer, right? I mean,
This
we
is
build
true.
something. We probably got some administration portion to that at a minimum, right? And so we normally
Yep.
have more than one place where we actually send things, and so those outputs, right? Turn into outcomes. And when I say outcomes, I'm really talking about how the outputs impact the users or impact the people that's going to receive
Right.
the output. And so
And if you could
realistically,
prioritize the outcomes, you will then be able to prioritize the stakeholders and who comes first, right?
wouldn't that help?
Because you could,
Because
yeah,
if this idea right here has an impact on these stakeholders, but you've
yes,
also evaluated that this particular thing is going to save us $100,000. But then you
yeah,
go over to this other thing that has one stakeholder and they're going to generate us $2 million. I don't know which one is most important to you, right? But the idea is maybe you need to go have that conversation over there first, unless you've been directed there. We're focusing internal. We're not worried
right.
about making external money. But how do you know that if you don't have your true North Star? If you don't
You
have an
gotta
idea where
gotta
you're
create that
going?
gotta create that business case, right?
It makes
So
it harder, right? So I agree with you totally because I can't prioritize, let's just say $100,000 return on investment versus $100,000 saving time. They're all equal to me until
mhm,
until I have direction, until I have an idea of where we're going, which ultimately trickles down and has an impact on our product backlog and everything else that we're doing moving forward. So, yeah, it becomes critical. And when I walk into organizations, it's literally probably the first thing that I deal with is product owners. So then you're working with teams and you're inside an organization, right? So here's a question, right? And you've been inside of organizations, right? Have you ever felt that product owners don't really get their just due? Like if when it comes to the product owner role, they don't understand it. It's not enough time spent on it. It seems to be all this focused on Scrum Master, development team, but there just doesn't seem to be a heavy enough focus on product owner. Have you seen that, or have you seen something different in that?
no, the answer is yes. So I do not believe that product owner, the role of a product owner, gets its just dessert, right?
And why do you think that
For
is?
two, for two reasons, right?
Mm-hmm.
So reason number one
Mm-hmm.
would actually be depending on the organization,
Yeah.
right? The individual selected for the product owner role may not have a complete grasp on. Well, there's two things. Hold on a
Okay.
second. I'm going to be very careful on how I say this. When we say that the product owner role is really either the business side of the house that has a handle on their products and services, and the delivery side of the house would be the Scrum Master and how they deliver and deploy the technical options to do so.
Okay.
In a true way, if the business side of the house never comes across and commits to actually having business owners that represent the products that they're delivering, the technical side of the house will select a role of a product owner.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if you select a technician as a product owner to somewhat try to interpret what the business side of the house wants,
Mm-hmm.
a fish is a fish. What are you gonna get, right?
I mean, I would be truthful. Like when I had I had a 200 person portfolio at one point, and our product owners were mostly architects and engineers. That's it.
Right.
At the highest level, they had somebody related to the business that understood the big problem. But when you have 200 people, 17 teams, one product owner leading a bunch of architects, it's probably
Might
not
not
going to
be.
turn out so well, right?
No.
Because we know that the product owner role is a more intimate role in that it has a, I guess, up, down, and lateral focus, right? You
That's
work
correct.
with the development team, you work with the developers, right? You work with management. It just goes across the board to different things. So the idea is that you
Correct.
don't just come drop the requirements off, walk away. You're actually involved throughout the entire thing, and
That's
so
correct.
that was a huge problem. And so the other side of it, which I know is true, I'm a past developer, and one thing remains true about developers in general. In general, most of them have never used the product. Like
That's
literally,
correct.
most of them have never truly been a customer of the product that you're building. And so it's really hard for them to come up with the future of where that product should go. And so you have to be really careful about this because they're really guiding where we're going at the end of the day. So it's super critical and super important. So I agree with
So
you.
right. So when we look at organizations such as, like you stated before, like you can look at a Google or you can look at whatever it may be,
Mm-hmm.
they actually have product owner accelerators, right? So
Yeah.
if you're new to that specific type of role,
Mm-hmm.
that's where they give you the hands-on training of what that product kind of looks like.
Mm-hmm.
So you get that. You get that experience, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the internal process has to happen. The organization needs to commit to create training materials to prep new product owners to understand their product,
Mm-hmm.
right? Especially if you're a new person, right? You may not understand how to touch this product or see this product or move this product around. So it's
Sure.
hard for you to determine what the future of that product is going to look like.
That's
So
true. I agree with that.
yes,
I agree with that.
yeah.
And it
And the
surely is
second part
helpful.
of your
Go ahead.
yeah, the second part of your question was is we believe probably out in the industry that there are specific types of soft skills and competencies that you must master
Mm-hmm.
as a good product owner, an
Yeah.
effective communicator. You have to be able to understand how to really truly at metrics.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Metrics are just a tool or an indicator to help you understand delivery, scope, and all that kind of fun stuff. We
Mm-hmm.
have to get individuals out of the mindset of using it as a weapon in terms of delivering and beat people up, right?
Mm-hmm.
You have to get out of that mindset.
I agree.
So,
I agree.
yep.
And the
So
question is,
getting a
you
product,
add to that
right?
something, right?
Yeah.
That data. Go ahead.
So getting a product owner to not think like a project manager is a challenge.
Yeah, and it could be a huge challenge. And when you said data, it means something, right? Because
Yeah.
that data helps you to make data driven decisions.
Correct.
When we sit up there and we say, that this is going to save you $100,000, this right here is going to possibly earn you $100,000. Well, how did you get to determining those two things? You have
Yeah.
to determine those two things to have them be able to be evaluated sort of equally to meet up with whatever goals and objectives that you have. So
Right.
that base, when I say this thing, this epic, this large user story, this requirement, right? This, use case, whatever you want to call your requirements, right? This entity right here is going to get some ROI of this. And I
Correct.
understand that. And now I can prioritize that, relatively speaking, within my product backlog. Also knowing that that thing probably has an 80-20 sweet spot. I probably can get the majority of the value out of that with doing only 20% of the work if I really also know the techniques of how to break things down, know how to work through those thoughts, because it requires that I have some domain knowledge, right? So it's
Right.
one of those things where all these things help you as a product owner, and having those skills, opportunity to practice, understanding product management. Yeah, I understand that project managers do certain things, but project managers didn't invent overseeing things.
That's
They
right.
didn't. They didn't, right? They're just one of the many overseers, right? The first people that oversaw things was probably mothers, right? Mothers are the greatest project managers on the planet, right? And
That's right.
so I don't call mothers project managers, I call them mothers, right? But the idea is that most of the skills when it comes to project management is really all about communication. And so,
Right.
yes, as a product owner, you have to be able to be masterful with communication, because you have stakeholders, you have people that are interested in getting these outcomes. And you have to find a way to tell some people yes and give some people a
Some
gentle
people know.
no, and help them understand it may never happen,
Right.
right?
So we could agree. Yeah. So we can agree that some very powerful things to make a really good product owner would be stakeholder management,
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
be, being able to understand in a very light way P&L, profits and losses, and understanding that whole piece.
Man,
Being able to
I would say yes to that. But I'm gonna say light.
in a light
I
in
would
a
love
light
for them to
way.
go deeper than light.
Right.
Become more dangerous. Because
All right. It
realistically,
was nice.
come on, think about this, Travis. Is a product or what they're doing not simply a mini business?
It is.
So having an
It is.
idea of profit and loss is important. And Travis, how many product owners have you known that have no input in budget?
All of them. All of them have no input and budget. Right. So, matter of fact, that's when we have this conversation of the composition of that Scrum team. And
Mm-hmm.
it should be a product team. So, we're
Uh-huh.
moving from Scrum is a process that we do, but ultimately it's a product team in a vertical way. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Agreed.
I'm getting deep, Devon. So
Yeah, I see.
I gotta.
I see. I'm about to step
All
back
right.
for a minute here. Continue.
Yeah, I'm gonna let you go and have some other people join, but it was really nice talking with you, and thank you very much for
Yeah,
answering my
but
question specifically to enterprise coaching.
but here's what I'm going to say to you.
Yep.
Okay. You are currently a what certifications do you have with the Scrum Alliance?
I have the CSM. That's where I stopped with Scrum Alliance, but I am a safe SPC, right, all the way across the board.
Okay. All right.
Um, but but I definitely wanted to do the enterprise for Scrum Alliance. I think it's good, and
So
I currently do
what you waiting
enterprise
for?
transformation.
What you waiting for?
Well, we'll talk after this call, man.
What you waiting for? I mean, I may not be the right person to talk to because I'm not a CEC, but I know CECs and CTCs, right? And my statement to you is, I think at least for the CECs that I know, they're amazing. They're just simply amazing, right? And so it's an amazing group of people that I think you would enjoy saying that you are a colleague of, that you are a peer of. And so
Right.
it's one of those things where I always encourage people who have this experience to go ahead and bring that experience to the community, because your experience is unique and your experience will actually help other people, one, make the decision, but two, get themselves involved as well. So I encourage
Right.
you to make a plan to get yourself more involved in this, because I believe that you will bring a ton of value. And Sherry, I see, says thanks, Devon. But Sherry is one of those amazing coaches, literally. So between Sherry and several other ones, I mean, it is one of those things where they are amazing people that love to do what they love to do. And I have such an undying respect for the CEC community, the CTC community, because I look at the things that they do, the people that they help, not just in organizations, but beyond that. And many of them are certified in other things that have nothing to do with the Scrum Alliance. And
Oh,
that right there is where I just gain a ton of respect, because
yeah.
that means that they're not relying on just Scrum or this community of certification that we kind of created as the thing that they rest their laurels on. So I
Yeah.
believe that in terms of that, I believe it's something that you should definitely go for and start having conversations with people about, and making sure you and kind of get yourself involved in that community, because I think the things that we were talking about are things that they would find and probably agree with what you're saying in terms of the value. So yeah, I'd love to see what you start doing. So don't disappoint me, man. You got to do it, man.
Woof woof. Pay attention on 2022.
My man, I
Talk
love
to
it.
you later.
Travis, I
Thank you.
appreciate you, man. Have a good evening. Enjoy the rest of it.
You too.
All right. Well, that was amazing, right? I enjoyed having Travis on. Again, the lines are open. I believe I made a mistake and pressed the button on somebody and didn't bring them in appropriately earlier. But I want to make sure you understand, and I'll throw the actual link out there once again for everyone. You are welcome to join us on the show if you have any questions in reference to anything. I like to just talk here. But what I was talking about earlier, just to continue, and we were talking about these certifications. I encourage everybody. You see this in the future. Uh, there's nothing wrong with gaining knowledge. There's nothing wrong with being a student, right? I have a few CECs that I probably am going to take a couple classes with, right? Even though I'm a certified Scrum trainer, I'm always on the journey of knowledge, right? Sherry Silas has a wonderful book about coaching that's coming out. I got an early peek. I don't need to. I'm not supposed to tell nobody that, but the book is amazing, right? It is absolutely amazing, and I encourage everybody to get a copy of that book. We got scrums. The people told me to make sure I let people know we got ACSMs coming up this weekend. We actually have a certified Scrum Masters coming up, but I normally don't push and press our stuff because, again, we do it for the love of it more than anything else. So that being said, let me finish this, okay? Look, people, do not wait till the last minute to get your Scrum education units together, to get whatever certification that you have. Do not wait till the last minute to do it. It just is a lot sloppier when you do that. I mean, I'm the master of, when I decide to procrastinate, actually procrastinating. So I wouldn't encourage that you do it. So you get that stuff in, and there's no questions, it's no problem. You got it in, it's done, and all that wonderful stuff. So let me go ahead and throw this link out here. If anybody wants to join us, you're welcome to join us. So there's the link on YouTube, and let me go ahead and wait a minute now. And then let me go ahead and add this in the other spot, so that I can make sure. But if you're on YouTube, you can find it easily. So let me add someone else here. This is a close friend of mine. Hey, Torin, what's up, man? How you gonna come on the show and not come on the show? Wait a minute, he just muted himself? How you? I don't know if Torin wanted to really join us, but I should keep him here just for the fun of it, maybe to embarrass him. You muted yourself if you're trying to join us, Torin, but the idea is Torin came on and Torin left off or whatever happened. So let's see. Doesn't look like Torin's really going to join us. I don't hear you. He hung up, so Torin didn't really want to join us, right? So I had somebody else who had some confusion earlier. So let me switch this back, and that's fine. I don't have no problem. We all make a mistake here and there. That's no issue with that. But back to the topic of making sure that you spend time dealing with your certifications accordingly. Um, it's really hard to lose some of these certifications and get them back. Sometimes you have to go and retake an entire test to get it back. Sometimes you got to go through the entire application process over again. The good thing is if you have a hardship and you go and present your hardship to the organization, most organizations that I know of, especially with COVID happened and everything else. I mean, the truth is, I had a hardship, right? I had a bunch of deaths that happened, and I lost my PMP because of that. A bunch of deaths, so other things that happened, right? And so they actually gave me a hardship and allowed me to continue and reapply, retake tests, all that kind of stuff, right? And so that was very helpful for me. It was really, really helpful for me. And so you may not think that that's something that's available to you, but I would definitely, if I had a hardship, if I had another kind of problem, go and have a conversation. There's not, all that people can tell you is no, okay? But make sure you have a conversation with any and everybody that you can in reference to this. I see several people have joined but didn't really join. I think that they were just clicking the link for the fun of it. But if you click that link that I put out there, you're probably going to join us on the show. So just know that. So I'll throw the link out there one more time. If you want to join us, you're welcome to join us. We're here. At least I'm here. But other than that, it's going to be an amazing, amazing rest of the week. It's been interesting because I'm doing college tours, right? I got a little young lady that is on a 5th year Arabic and is trying to pick a college that is doing flagship Arabic programs. And so, I was really surprised. I went down to University of Mississippi. Now, I say Mississippi. I know it's not Mississippi, but my people is from the South. And so the people from the South that I know, they say Mississippi. And so I say Mississippi, right? And so we went down to Ole Miss. If you don't know Ole Miss history, right? Ole Miss is where James Meredith. If you don't know James Meredith, think about the black guy that JFK had to walk in to the school with a whole bunch of troops, with a whole bunch of federal troops, right? That's the guy I'm talking about. That's the school that we went to last week. And they got an amazing statue of him on the yard. And I'm like, when I say on the yard, on the campus, right? Some people don't know what I mean by that. And so it was interesting. And they actually they put the red carpet out for my daughter. And it is a school that we would consider when I wouldn't consider it at all. And the other school she considered is IU. Like, we went from where the KKK was formed to where Jim Crow was really strong. And so those are not two places we would expect to have had flagship programs, but they actually do existed. So, it's one of those things where it's kind of hard to be open-minded in this community, in this world, when you have all these things that have happened, like up in Minneapolis, the George Floyd, kind of take some money from the police to, kind of put it toward other things. That agenda failed. It got voted down. So we still got all the stuff that we go through, look out in the world. But we were really concerned going down to Mississippi. I mean, really concerned going to Indiana for all these obvious reasons. And so this week we're going down to Austin, and so that's going to be different. But, it's been a beautiful thing. And it's just interesting to see these schools still thriving, like literally still thriving, and kids still excited about going and attending them, so that is an amazing thing. And it's actually very encouraging. And the young people that I'm meeting on these journeys, man, they are amazing. Like, these are amazing kids. If we don't steward this country in the right way, we're not going to lead the right things for those young people to move forward and turn this country into whatever it's going to be in the future. And I think that many of them have some good ideas on where this country can go. So I think some of us need to kind of step to the side and and start helping to position these people for leadership positions instead of just trying to hold on to power in some crazy way like our life is dependent on it. Okay, so on that note, I think we're pretty good for the evening. I'm going to say to you all that we'll see this in the future. Thank you. I want to say to you all that are here right now, thank you. I appreciate you showing up. I always come here every other Wednesday. I really started doing this more for Bearded Eagle alumni to get them an opportunity to ask a question. People come on, they don't. It's a free form show. I'm not creating this big agenda. So the idea is that you come on and let's just have a conversation. It's really, really nothing more than that. And there's some conversations I would like to plan to have. But you know, I'm enjoying spending time with the children and stuff like that. So we'll figure it out. But anyway, on that note, I'm gonna say to you all, I've enjoyed you for the evening. You all have a wonderful, wonderful rest of the week. And I will see you 2 weeks from now. So peace. Thank you so much. See you in a couple weeks. And we'll go from there. Thank you. And we're out.